Why, hello there! A Knife Tale here. I do hope you're having a good day. I'm bringing you a knife review of this Protech Newport. This is a pretty small knife, a pretty small Protech. Not necessarily my typical jam, but I will admit, when I saw this knife, this was a knife that I got pretty early into collecting knives, and it was one that I wanted to pursue, because it just, I don't know why. It spoke to me at the time. I still like it. Maybe it doesn't speak to me quite as much now that I've been in knives, seen many variants and stuff like that, but it's still interesting, it's still nice. And this particular one happens to have that sapphire blue DLC, which I do so very much like. Let's jump into specs, and then we'll talk about the knife real fast. You have, to the front of the scale, just under 3 inches of blade. Just a hair over 7 inches overall, which means this should be a hair a little bit over 4 inches, yeah. On handle length, ratios aren't terrible. Let's make our comparisons to our resident small and full-size knife, the Elementum and Conspirator. There we go. And as you can see, the Protech Newport is very, very much similar to the Elementum. It is actually a tiny hair longer, mostly handle, I think. The blade length is pretty close to 1-for-1. Maybe the Elementum actually has it beat a tiny bit, but... And that's not something I normally say. I don't normally go for knives this small. But I did here, so it is what it is. And one more comparison for actual grip length, because that is important in my opinion, and I'm not going to count this little area. I wouldn't suggest going up over around this area, but you have just under, I don't know, one battery, and that's over 3/4 of another battery, so most people will probably be able to get a full 4-finger grip on this thing, especially if they squeeze in a little bit. Even if they don't, I can still get a little bit sticking out on the end there. Thickness of the Newport, 0.403. So basically 400,000ths of an inch, which is actually very thin. Most knives tend to come into at the, like this, right around here, 450 thousandths to 500 thousandths, which is half an inch. This one is even thinner than that. The blade stock is also very thin at under 1/10 of an inch. Behind the edge is the area where I shouldn't be quite as thin. Protech likes to have slightly thicker geometry. They tend to have, 17 thousandths behind the edge-ish. They tend to have pretty low bevels on their knives. And their edge bevel itself tends to be decently sized, so that I don't think they're like 25-degree edge bevels. They're probably 20-degree, maybe. Yeah, I'm going to say that's probably a 20-degree edge bevel. They do tend to be a little bit thicker. Most American-made knives, which Protech is an American-made company, and that makes USA-made products, most American knives do tend to run a little thicker behind the edge. Protech is no exemption, but they are still definitely usable, definitely cutting knives. This one has lost a bit of its edge. But I will admit, I probably do need to sharpen this thing. It is not... no, I could probably still cut myself with that if I tried. But, yeah, a little thicker geometry than maybe I would like to see on such a thin blade. Like, I would kind of hope this would be super slice, or maybe even hollow ground kind of thing, because just what it is, such a small knife. Hardware. Hardware is T6 all the way around, including the pocket clip. Now, that's normally that would normally be something I'd really knock this knife for, but Protech is one of the companies that does get somewhat of an exemption for that, because they do a really deep T6. Like, if you take a look, let's see if you can get it on camera. Okay, there's the edge of the... See how deeply it goes into that tooling on the face of that screw? Yeah, it's pretty deep, and these screws are, the pocket clip's not quite as much, but it's not reversible, so other than removing it once and maybe replacing it with something else, you're not going to have to worry about that. But the rest of the screws are ones that are deep enough that I don't really think are going to strip out very easily. They certainly still can, they certainly still are T6, but I'm actually willing to overlook it just because of just how deep that tooling is in there, which is a very rare thing for me to, or probably anyone to say, overlooking the T6s, but I'll give it to them. They do a good enough job with it. Weight of the Newport, 2.18 ounces. This thing is a featherweight. You get more than an ounce an inch, and yeah, it's like nothing's there. With one caveat being pocket clip. We'll talk about that. But we're done with the specs, so let's just start talking about the knife. This particular one is a drop point blade in S35 VN. They typically have 154 S35 and S35 VNs as their blades deals, and then it moves up to things like Damascus and stuff. Protech does a lot of variations on their models. Typically, you have a base, you have a couple that are slightly higher up, and then you have ones that are much more elaborate, Damascus with maybe an inlay or something like that, different handle material. And then you have crazy engraved, super expensive ones that are, yeah, crazy. They like doing a lot of iterations. And, I mean, I personally like that they do that. I mean, some of the really nice iterations, so I wouldn't mind seeing them come back and stick around for a little bit longer so people actually get a chance to grab them. But, yeah, they do a lot of one-off kinds of things and stuff like that, too. So, the Sapphire DLC is a DLC. It's strong. It's going to perform. It's great. It's beautiful. I love that stuff. I will say it's not perfectly evenly applied around the entire edge here on this one. You got a little wiggle on there, which is the first time I've seen that on this, but it's very minor. And I'm not going to be like, oh my god, it's the worst thing ever. Underneath this DLC, you appear to have a belt satin and some sort of horizontal satin up here on the flat. It's very hard to tell. It just kind of looks grainy, honestly. It's interesting looking. Protech logo, USA, and the steel. That's fine. I don't mind Protech's logo too much, and they typically keep it to the flats, which I prefer. Swedge up here, drop point. Long, pokey, sticky knife. You got definitely access to the tip. As I said, the edge bevel could be... I mean, the edge thickness and bevel could be maybe a little bit better. One thing that I do think Protech needs to work on is their plunge grinds. They give you a sharpening tool. They do. But a lot of times their plunge grinds get awfully close. As you can see, that plunge may... I mean, it kind of looks like it's up here, but at the same time, that looks like it's a little wider right there. So it might be getting all the way down there, which is annoying. You'd have to cut in more choil. And looking over this knife, before I started this review, I noticed that if you look down in there, you see that mark right there? On the other side of that, this area back here? The blade, this is the part of the blade that actually contacts underneath that. I don't think that's like the full-on stop pin. I hope it's not, or I hope that, you know, the actual button clicks into this indent here and also acts as a point of contact. Because if that is the only stop pin, it's basically pressing right into here, and you pretty much can't sharpen the knife. I mean, that would immediately start having issues if it's touching directly into the back of this area. It does seem to be making contact, but I don't necessarily think that's the stop pin. So you probably, I think there's other points of contact in there. So you most likely, particularly this underneath part of the blade, because, you know, that's what actually gets locked in and holds the blade closed. So you should be fine. It's just a weirdly set up. Well, it's a weird setup. Yeah, you should be fine to cut in more choil and work around there, but I don't know. I'm not in love with the way it's set up there. This is a button-operated side-opening automatic with a spring inside, as most, not all Protechs are, most Protechs are. Protech has typically and historically been an automatic knife company. In this particular case, the button here is inlaid with abalone. I like abalone, so that sort of drew me in. Not all variants are going to have that. They're going to have different kind of button inlays, all kinds of things like that. As I said, they do a lot of different variations. The base model of this thing without the sapphire and the abalone may have 154. They may have a S35 variant. But you can usually get and find if you spend some time looking for it. It is on bearings, but you can't see the bearings. They're completely encased in there. Very nice. The handle is completely made of aluminum, and that's a nitpick that I have. I don't like the finish of aluminum they use. It is something that can start to pick up marks a bit quicker, and it will also take marks that maybe start actually impacting the frame a bit more. This one has stayed pretty darn clean for the most part, but it will start taking up little snail trails. I think that there are probably better finishes for aluminum, if we're going to be completely honest, that would work better. But that's again a nitpick that, I mean, if it doesn't, it's not going to stop the aluminum from working. It's good quality aluminum, so you're fine. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing maybe a different finish, which of course they do use a lot of different materials. There are titanium variants. There are that aluminum bronze kind of variant, though that's pretty heavy. There's a lot of options. You might be able to find something more suited to what you want, but this one is just a slightly bit chalky, sort of powdery kind of coating that I'm not particularly in love with. It is centered. There is no play, and when I first got it out, there was quite a bit of play, and it gave me one hell of a scare because I started to tighten it, and I thought for a second it still had play, and it was tight, and it wouldn't even deploy all the way. But when I played around with it, I got it back to, yeah, it deploys fine, there's no play, it is centered. That's pretty reliable. Protech does a pretty good job of that. So, thankfully, I didn't have to eat my own words and say, oh my god, this thing's terrible. No, it's not. It's good. Protech's known for their snap. It's a strong snap. Even on a small thing like this, it's quite authoritative. Honestly, the biggest downside and issue on this knife is the pocket clip. You can kind of see why it's an issue because it's gigantic. Yeah, even though it has a flat down here on the end, which I don't really like, it works. It's got good flex. It's nice. It's a steel clip. It's folded over. It's would be a solid clip on most other knives, even if it is maybe a bit longer than I'd like to see. But on this tiny little knife, small, thin, yeah, there is no hiding the fact that there is a clip on there. It's not uncomfortable. Well, I mean, if you really grip into it, let's see. Gorilla Grip's fine. Saber Grip, if you really grip into it, that starts having a little bit of hot spots. It's not the most uncomfortable everything. I mean, everything on this knife is finished really well. It's nice and rounded and softened. So they've done a good job there. There's no sharp edges. So they've taken it into consideration. It's just, yeah, you feel it. It's present. And for such a sleek little sort of gentlemanly carry knife, I kind of wish this was different. That is one thing that I think, aside from their sharp control and plunge grind and maybe possible different finishes for their aluminum, one thing I wish Protech would address, probably more than anything else, is their pocket clips. They just don't always fit, especially when you get like certain more expensive variants and you get this crazy beautiful inlay and some sort of titanium and all this finish, and then you just get this stamped over coated or uncoated steel pocket clip that's just kind of there, that just does not fit with everything else that's going on. This thing is definitely a candidate for getting a minimal sort of replacement, maybe titanium lower pocket clip, just that sort of fits the flow of the knife better. But other than that, it's pretty darn good. And honestly, Protech is pretty darn good. They do a good job. Thinner blades, thinner behind the edge, better plunge and pocket clip is a pretty consistent theme across most Protech knives. I think they could probably do better all around on that, but in the case of the actual knives, they still work as knives. They're still good knives. They're USA made, they're nice, they're quality, and I will give them this. Protech's knives typically come in at much more reasonable prices than some USA made companies do. Yeah, it's aluminum, it's not titanium or anything like that, but they typically come in around the $200 to $240 range for your sort of base models, or maybe just like a black blade or a little something. This, of course, the Sapphire DLC costs a bit more, but it was still... I'm trying to recollect because it was quite a while ago, but I'm pretty positive it was still decently under $300 for the S35 and DLC upgrade and the abalone. So yeah, they're definitely justifying themselves better than some other USA-made companies, which I can definitely appreciate. I can. So yeah, the Protechs are recommendable more or less in general, and I think that if you're a knife enthusiast and collector and enjoyer, there's probably something in their line that you'll find appeals to you. And the Newport is just an interesting sort of take on a very small, gentlemanly knife. Just, needs a better clip. That's it. So I'm going to end things here. Folds up nicely, clean. And say thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Consider liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, etc. Spread the new word. Maybe I'll get some more subscribers and see where the channel goes. Maybe not. Who knows? Maybe I'm just gonna quit on you. No, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Who knows? Gonna do it while it's fun, and until then, you're stuck with me. Well, no, you're not. You can leave anytime now. You can. Don't worry about it. But I greatly appreciate it if you don't. And let me know what you want to see and what you want me to talk about more about more about. Okay. This is falling apart at the end here. What areas do you want to focus on? What do you want to know about knives that maybe you're not getting elsewhere? Let me know. I'll see you later. Have a great day.